Hello there, and you're very welcome to Prime Time. Well, the story of the Tuam mother and baby home caused global outrage when suspicions about mass burials of infants there reached the national media over 4 years ago. It sparked a commission of investigation, which after a number of interim reports was due to issue its final report in the coming weeks. That's now been postponed until February 2020. Survivors of mother and baby homes say they're getting old and they've criticised these delays. They want answers. Well, Prime Time has gone into the archives to try and visualise the home and to understand what's known so far. This report from Mark Coughlin.
One story from one institution which has stuck in the minds of so many people in this country.
We're going to walk down now to the actual grave. So they bury them everywhere.
Everywhere.
Well, we're sure they're buried there in tanks anyway.
In an underground tank and a series of sewage disposed of.
2014, the world spotlight swung onto a corner of a playground behind a housing estate in Tuam.
I won't rest until it's finalised and I see them buried with reverence that they should have got.
Since then, a commission has been launched and excavations conducted. So after years of investigation and media attention, what exactly do we know about what happened here and what needs to happen next? To try to understand how babies were buried on the site of the Tuam home, we've delved into the archives. The story starts 180 years ago when famine workhouses were being built all across Ireland. In 1842, one was opened in Tuam. Decades later, it would become the mother and baby home.
So all of the workhouses, the first phase, 130 buildings, were based on a model plan. There were different types. The ones which had a capacity for between 400 and 800 people, and then ones which had a capacity for 800 plus.
The Tuam workhouse would have looked something like this. We've been trying to find out more about how it was built in the wake of the shocking revelations about the burial of children from the mother and baby home period. From the workhouse plan, we know the sewage system included cesspits, underground vaults for holding human waste.
George Wilkinson, who was the architect of the model, he designed it that it was just an outflow from the pits. The Board of Guardians could adapt that and run that into some sort of soak away, or very often it would just be run into a stream or into a ditch.
The plans show 9 cesspits, yet records indicate at least one more was added 6 years after the workhouse officially opened, built in 1848. But where was it placed? The Tuam Herald reported on workhouse board meetings throughout the mid to late 1800s. At one meeting, it was noted this additional cesspit structure was at the rear of the workhouse. The earliest maps from the 1890s showed this little outcrop on the site, a plot of land which was not originally owned by the workhouse. In 2017, the Commission of Investigation found human remains dating from the mother and baby home period in an underground structure in this area. Judging from the archives, one possibility is that babies were buried in what was an old cesspit dating from workhouse times, but the records show construction on the site didn't end there. Tuam Herald 1871, nuisance prejudicial to the health of the occupants. The smell emanated from the water percolate. The filth of the cesspool flows onto the road. Tuam Herald 19. Inmates are required for cleaning the cesspool. Tuam Herald, May 1904. It seems that throughout the decades, the waste system in the workhouse was a big problem. Finally, it appears in 1918 that the board moved to tackle the issue. They funded work on what was called the Workhouse Sewage Scheme. Afterwards, the Tuam Herald reported on the minutes of the meeting, where it was said that the workhouse is now, for the first time and forever, disposed of this chronic trouble. Catherine Corless has found the price list for the materials purchased to carry out those works.
It just explains it, but it doesn't say what they did.
Doesn't say exactly how they built it, but it tells you that they did buy something to build.
Yeah.
So where did they build? The next update to the map is for 1927. On that, this corner is listed as a sewage tank. That appears to correlate with the work done in 1918. A sewage tank is likely to have made any cesspit still in the area obsolete. In the years between 1918 and 1927, a lot had changed. The Irish Free State had come into existence and the site had changed hands.
in 1925, the Bonsecourt sisters moved in there, and it was specifically only for unmarried mothers, and who waited there for a year with their babies. And they took in orphans as well at times, or families who couldn't cope. They would take the children for a while.
Patrick, Peter and Tom all spent their early years in the Tuam home.
All I can remember is the corridors. The corridors very long, and the only rooms was our bedroom. And we hear the roars of children, as well as myself. I said, when I went to bed, I sleep on that bed for 3 or 4 days. And the mattress, and smelling and everything. It's so hard, and I was locked up the whole time.
So there's more graves out in that area. I was born in 1942 in the Tuam baby home. I remained there for 5 years and 2 months. I never seen out, ever. And we were all the time down-driven and blackguarded in every sort of way. No, I done very well, fairly good where I was fostered. But I can tell you, and I tell the country, that people were blackguarded and blackguarded terribly. 47 I came out.
Once I came outside that gate, I have memories. Yes, that's it. Meeting adults for the first time. That's all I remember. Didn't see an animal, didn't see trees moving, didn't hear the wind, because I suppose we'd be inside so much. Inside them buildings.
In the decade after the nuns took over, local reports say a public sewage scheme was brought to Tuam. The work in the 1930s likely put all other underground sewage structures out of use. It's in this period, after the home was connected to the public sewage scheme, that researchers including Catherine CORLESS believe it's likely the underground structures were used for burials.
The sisters left in 1961, and the children went to either Castlepollard or Rosscray, Shanross. And then the gates were just closed up, and for a good 10 years it turned into a bit of a jungle, a bit of a wilderness.
The Bonsecourt sisters say they handed all their records to Galway County Council when they left. About 10 years after the home closed, the council decided to demolish the buildings. A playground and houses were set to be built on the site. But the documents from the planning process back then include a new map. It's from the 1970s and shows a large area at the rear of the site marked as a burial ground. It's the only set of documents available which indicates anyone was buried here. The back gardens of the houses which were built are clearly planned around it, and yet it seems the site wasn't maintained as a burial plot, and no further maps mark it as one. The council says it's cooperating with the Commission of Investigation. In the years after the housing estate was built, local people set up a memorial garden, believing children from the home had been buried properly in the area. In 2014, Catherine CORLESS began researching where children from the home were buried. She found 796 death certs and no burial records. She said it appeared that the children were buried in the sewage tank marked on the maps, where the memorial now stands.
The babies' bodies had been disposed of
next to a disused sewage.
The world's media picked up on the story, and in 2015, a commission of investigation was launched. Beforehand, the Mail on Sunday newspaper asked Kevin Bright to scan the site with ground-penetrating radar. He identified 2 areas just less than a metre under the surface.
From the scans, we were able to identify this particular area from about 0.7 to 0.9 from the ground down. We hit the first anomaly, and that went on down to approximately just over 2 metres. And that continued for the length of the wall to the right-hand side as you enter the graveyard.
When the Commission did their own ground-penetrating radar surveys, they got similar results. Then they carried out test excavations. 2 structures were found underground, potentially both a workhouse cesspit from the 1840s and the sewage tank from 1918. Or possibly some other structure. We won't know until the Commission's full report. No bones were found in one, but the Commission said significant numbers of human remains were located in the other. The team took a small number of bones as a sample. When tested, Catherine Corless's theory was confirmed. The remains were babies between the ages of 35 fetal weeks and 3 years, from the mother and baby home period. Franny Hopkins grew up in Tuam. He says he and a friend fell into the structure when he was 12 years old.
There was an 8-foot wall completely around the perimeter of the home, and we would have climbed up on the wall, and on jumping from the wall we landed on a hollow sound, and when we pushed back, you know, the briars or the overgrowth, we found the slab. So we pried open the slab, and that's when we discovered the chamber with the remains in it.
In an interim report, the Commission said the structure appears to be related to the treatment or containment of sewage and/or wastewater, but it has not yet determined if it was ever used for this purpose. The Commission says there were 20 chambers within the structure. In 17 of them, human remains were found. 20 chambers within the one tank. When people hear that, they might think it was a tank that was repurposed at some point for the purpose of burials. Do you see that as a possibility?
I have no evidence, you see. I have no evidence of what exactly they did. I can only present what I found and what it strongly suggests. We know the tank is there. We know it was a purpose either for wastewater or waste sewage. We know those facts. The government has stated it. And whether they prepared the chamber, we don't know. If so, why won't they tell us? Why won't they just say that, okay, we had to do this for some reason or another. This is the way we buried them. Why wasn't there an indication that they were buried there? Why the secrecy? Why did they go away in 1961, close the gates, and not say that there are up to maybe 800 children buried in this ground? Why would they do that, a religious order?
While Franny Hopkins says the bones he saw were piled in a corner, that contrasts with other local witnesses who say they saw remains which had been wrapped in cloth and placed on shelves. Franny's story has been consistent since we first spoke to him in 2014. He accepts he saw something different, far smaller than what's been outlined by the Commission.
And as I said, it would have been 6 foot by 4, maybe 5 foot deep. The Commissioner said that they came across 20 chambers and they found remains in 17. If you multiply the 17 by what we've seen, which would have been low teens, you're still only talking 170. That's nowhere near the 900 that's supposed to be there.
796 they're supposed to be.
You know what I mean? So it's nowhere near that, so where are the rest of them?
One theory to explain the differing descriptions is that Franny only saw part of the structure he fell into. He says it was a small H-shaped tank. Maybe there was more to it beyond what he could see. Another theory is that other witnesses happened upon other structures in other parts of the site.
I'm not 100% sure of other burials on the site. I can't be because I haven't come across the evidence of any other burial grounds on the site. Hopefully, we will get a count when they excavate the tank. That is vitally important. Hopefully, there will be little skulls left. That will tell us how many children are actually buried there. And if they're not all there, are they the ones that are adopted or illegally adopted?
A final theory is that all 796 babies listed as having died in the home didn't die in the home at all. Instead, they were reported dead and adopted under a new identity. Conal O'Flaherty has reported extensively on issues related to religious institutions. He's examined death records from other mother and baby homes.
Given the level of numbers, that unless we know where these children are, it's a kind of a possibility we have to look at, that potentially all of these children didn't die. And I myself did an analysis of Bessborough death records and matched them to state records, state inspection reports. And for the period I covered, they were the order was over-reporting the number of deaths to the state than it was recording privately, which in itself is kind of an odd anomaly. The hope is that the Commission can get to the bottom of this, but you know, they have a task of work ahead of them.
In 2014, Peter Mulrine found out he has a sister who was born in the Tuam home. She's one of the 796 babies named on Catherine Corless's list, recorded as having died there.
I'm still trying to get a file on my on my sister. I've been in the High Courts 8 times, and yet Tussla hasn't come up with the answers to me.
What do you suspect?
Well, I don't know. Well, what I'm hoping is that she was sold off and that she's alive in America. I'm hoping she was sold, that someday we could meet. That's all I'm hoping for. I hope she's not down in that septic tank in that site, which were nearly 800 babies are supposed to be in there.
The Commission is currently examining Tuam and 17 other similar institutions. In recent weeks, its deadline for reporting was extended by a further year. It said it spent considerable time examining burial practices at Tuam. A full excavation is planned in the coming months. It's understood that could include any area where children from the home may be buried. In the meantime, survivors from Tuam and elsewhere are still awaiting answers.
We were making progress, but maybe not fast enough. Maybe we're too fast, I don't know. But there's a lot of hold-ups. I think there is too many, because we're getting old and we're getting scarce. And I'm afraid to keep it going too long till we're all gone. And then there'll be nothing more about it.
That report was from Mark Coughlin. And as we heard there, representatives of survivors from Tuam are pointing out that they are an ageing group and that the exhumation and forensic level testing may come too late for them. In response to the request from the survivors to begin collecting their DNA samples, Minister Zappone has asked Dr. Jeffrey Shannon to see if the existing law allows her to meet this request. And she says that his examination will be done in the context of what is scientifically possible. David.
Well, we're in the grip of the worst weather of the winter so far, with temperatures due to go as low as 6 degrees below zero.